Hi, I'm Katie, and welcome to Hey It Gets Better. This is the podcast where I chat to people about the ups and downs of their lives and how they got to where they are now. Life can be pretty tough sometimes, there's no escaping that fact. But at Hey It Gets Better, we're all about talking about the journey. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and remember, hey, it gets better.
Hi, welcome to Hey It Gets Better, and today I'm joined by Vanessa Belleau, who has her own business, High 15, where she is a business and diversity consultant. So welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on. So I gave you a little bit of a brief introduction there, but if you want to add anything else that our listeners should know about you, take it away.
Oh yeah, no, that's nice. Actually, I wear an additional hat. I'm also an executive coach. So I am a business strategist, a diversity and inclusion consultant, and an executive coach. So I focus on different aspects, I guess, of business and people performance.
I think we'll just dive in with the conversation, really. So the main question that I ask everyone who comes on this podcast is, what were the challenges that you faced to get to where you are now? So it's super open and we can chat about any of the challenges you feel like talking about, really.
It is this very vast question, but I think I like how vast it is because then, of course, indeed, I can just, tell you a little bit more about me, so then you understand in the context of me, why is it that I had the challenges that I had to overcome, I guess. So I am a Black woman. I show up as a Black woman. I did my DNA test. I'm actually 80% from African descent, but I am a Caribbean culturally, and 20% white. So I'm mixed in that sense because my parents come from small islands in the Caribbean, French islands, and so they came to Paris, where I was born in the 70s. I was born in the 80s, and so I basically just studied. I lived and I was born and bred in Paris, and I studied there until I was 22, where and actually at the time, one of the key challenges, I guess, for me to overcome, I guess, when I go back to being in Paris, it was the idea that I had a lot of dreams that, and I was not sure that my context, the French country, the French culture, the French way of doing things was big enough or would actually help me or support me with my dreams. So from a young age, I think that I was always searching for something else, which I think was interesting. And I think it's only when you do, now that I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, you've always been looking for something. So in France, I never felt very comfortable. My parents, Black parents, were always telling me, you've got to work, very hard. You've got to be top of your class. You've got to make choices that will help you with your future because, being a Black woman, ambitious like you are, is very difficult. And won't be very easy. My sisters, we were kind of different a little bit. Like they were happy to, go with the flow. And for me, it was always around the challenge and actually being like, let me push and let me try to understand a little bit more about what else could I do? What else can I learn? And also I understood very early on that the society was not necessarily designed for me to win. So I had to think about, okay, is it France or is it just the world in general? And so when I was 22, actually earlier than that, when I was 19, I decided to go into a business school because in France is a very elitist country, or at the time it was a very elitist society. So in order for somebody to match their ambitions, that person needed to have receipts, and one of the key receipts was to go from to come from a business school or somewhere prestigious. So I decided to go into a business school, and which opened my mind even more. And then that opened my mind actually to the world. And I was really like, okay, I really don't fit in Paris. I need to go somewhere else. So I went to study in Berlin for 6 months when I was 21, and I really experienced different things, which actually made me discover about myself much more. Because one of the key challenge, I think, when I was younger was the idea that yes, I had a lot of ambition, but I didn't really know myself. Um, and I think, we're all on that journey to actually figure out who we are. But that was really interesting to me, where I was just like, all I knew is that I didn't feel comfortable. And so early on, I decided that one of the key things in my life was that I wanted to make myself feel comfortable. And that is still very, very important, and this dictates actually quite a lot of my decisions today, which is quite good. And then went to my business school. So then travel. So as I said, went to Berlin for 6 months, really experienced different, like I was by myself. I didn't know anybody, had to make new friends, etc. And again, that really tested my character. So that was a challenge in itself, actually, because nobody, especially my black friends, or other students, they were like, Germany is a racist country. Why are you going there? And I was always thinking, it is, because I experienced it when I was younger. But for me, it was like I had almost a little revenge to take over. Like I experienced racism at the age of 13 in Germany. And it was quite a traumatizing experience. And I was thinking, I'm 21 and I feel strong now that I need to, go back to the country at least and maybe define a new narrative. And my time in Berlin was amazing. So I'm very glad that I did this, because one of the key things about challenges I think that we have in our lives is that sometimes it's very easy to get stuck and to actually let an experience define us. When actually for me, I was like, I want to reclaim. So reclaiming is something that is very important in my narrative today. And it started actually when I took that bold movement of going by myself to Germany, living in Berlin, where nobody, I didn't have family, I didn't know anyone. So that was really cool. And then once there, I actually discovered, I came to London for a week. And I was just like, oh my God, I feel free. So when I was here, I felt very, very free. And I was thinking, again, with this idea of feeling comfortable, that's what I want to do. I want to feel free, because then I will be free of challenges. Or yes, there will be challenges, there will be curveballs, but because I feel free and comfortable, then I will have everything that can help me to overcome my challenges. So that's been kind of my way of thinking, which means that, to be honest, I don't know. Of course, I had many challenges, but I'm not too sure that I never focus on them too much, because I knew that they helped me to become like who I am today. And the type of challenges that I've encountered when in London were much less versus what I think I would have encountered in Paris. So if anything, I'm very thankful, because my experience as a Black woman in London is very different, because I am foremost French, which is actually quite interesting. When people hear me speak, they're like, oh, you're French. And it seems that with that, I could, eradicate quite a lot of maybe some, racism or fear of the other, because I was really, because actually the Frenchness in me really drew people in. And I understood that also very early on as well. Because again, I suffered from racism, etc. in Paris, but then in London, I was really, I really was aware that, I could define something that would make me more palatable. And I didn't even have to define it, because actually, as I said, I discovered that the Frenchness in me was really like, oh wow, she's French, and therefore French is sexy, and we love the French accent, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So then I played on that quite a lot, and actually were able to define the career that I wanted to have.
Yeah, that there's so much really like good stuff in what you've said, and I really like how you talk about reclaiming the narrative and like doing stuff that made you comfortable, like it for and one thing I find interesting is, did you know you were like actively doing that kind of thing when you were doing it, or is it only now in hindsight you see it? Because I can, I think, stuff like that, it just seems like, when you've got a fixed mindset and that's how you've only ever experienced anything, it can be quite hard to imagine the opposite. But you took control, which I think is really good.
Yeah, I think was I aware when I was doing them? Yes, because I'm very lucky and very blessed because my dad is my God, like is my guru, is my my little, I think, guardian angel, who always, he's also my coach really, who always and my dad has been through terrific and terrific as though fantastic, but also terrible experiences in his life, and he was able to guide me actually. And my parents really understood, when I told them, okay, I want to go to another country where I don't and I didn't know anybody, but I was just like, I would like to go and explore and actually find a new narrative. And they understood that from the get-go. So I had support from my parents, which I think is very good because I didn't have to fight that. If anything, they were just like, okay, be careful, but we trust you. And I think that also helped me to trust myself. And also I was always able to chat to them, to tell them, especially my dad, to tell him, oh my God, this is what I'm experiencing and I'm not too sure about this and this. And he would actually always give me perspective, which I think is very important. When we want to navigate as a young person, when we want to navigate the world, it's too easy to actually just follow only what you think. I think it's really good to be able to have mentors, to have coaches, people around you who actually are part of your support system, who actually get you and give you that, the perspective of, okay, this is where you are today, but really project yourself into the future. And my dad always does that. Like he always tells me, okay, but always think about, the next year, the next 3 years, where will you be? What do you want to achieve? And anything that you do today kind of really has an impact on what is on your vision. And so that is something that has been really instilled in me for a long time. So when I came to London, I knew that this was the type of kind of mindset that I needed to have in order to survive, to be honest, just to survive and actually to then develop the life I wanted. But I knew when I was younger that, yeah, I did survive for a while because it was like, oh, all of this was new. But I had to adapt quite fast. And so I was very aware. I had other friends who at the time who were just, I was talking to them in the same manner, but they were just looking at me. And I was just thinking, okay, you don't understand. One day you may. But for me, yeah, I'm very close to the goals and to what I want to achieve in life. So it was very easy for me to keep on track.
Yeah, and having that bigger perspective, I can imagine, is like really helpful no matter what your goals are. I know I do all quite a bit as well. You'll say something or you'll make a decision and you think it's the end of the world really, but when you get some perspective on it and the long-term goals, those little dents in the road, you can still get there in the end.
Exactly. And I think, to be honest, the dents the dents on the road, I think they're very important because if life was too easy, we would not appreciate it anyway. We're human beings at the end of the day. And unfortunately, we're never content with what we have, and I think, nowadays, there's this big, I think, trend, but also habit of being grateful, which is amazing. But at the time, we were all thriving for more and more and more because we're never happy with what we had, So I think this is, it's interesting. It's perspective is everything. Perspective is everything.
Yeah, and I kind of agree as well with what you say about this trend of, being grateful for what we have, which is important, but then also, wanting more.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've always been a very ambitious individual. And I think, but to be honest, I think some of it is really led by the fact that, this idea of survival, I think it's very linked into that because today, I'm 37 years of age, I have my own business, I'm doing well. Do you see what I mean? And when I look at when I was 16 years ago, when I came to London, and I was an intern, I remember, and I was earning £15,500 a year. And at the time, it was a lot of money because, some internships were not even paid. Now, people wouldn't do that, especially in London. But it was amazing. And now I look at, how far I've come and I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, I think it's very important to have a 5 years plan and actually be able to say, yes, I want to earn more money, but I do think that it needs to be paired with, I want to earn more money doing what I love or doing something that makes me feel, very motivated and passionate about. Because working or creating a career is hard, right? It's very difficult. And I think that we need to all kind of we need to start thinking about how do we create a meaningful career for ourselves, that enables us to achieve our vision, our mission, our purpose, enables us, of course, to make money, and just enables us to smile and be happy.
Yeah, and I think you definitely, I smile every time I look at your business and your Instagram page. You don't really get taught this at school, really. It's like, what job do you want?
Exactly. And I think this is the piece where I'm just like, oh God, like I wish. I mean, again, when I went to a business school, I did have this type of learnings, but you're right that indeed we don't get taught that. But for me, it's very important because I think authenticity and integrity are big values of mine, where I really want to feel, proud of what I do and myself. And you can only do that really, especially nowadays in this day and age in 2020, where we've reconnected so much. All of us, I think, have reconnected so much with the concept of just being a human being, just being living and breathing, because of COVID-19, but also because of the latest edition of the BLM movement. I think we appreciate life a little bit more. And I think we also we try anyway to connect with one another in a different manner, because we understand that the society is not perfect. We knew it was not, but we understand how imperfect the society is. And I think that is very interesting in itself.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the challenges that I know that like a lot of people my age face is, how do we make this a better world, but be able to do it? Because I mean, it's so hard to just change the system by yourself. But how would you become a better ally to movements such as the Black Lives Matter movement, and how do you help to stop discrimination when you are young, starting in your career? What are the types of things you can do if you want to help, or even if you are experiencing it?
I think you have to develop bravery, and you have to be very courageous. So that's one. Two, I think that actually the first step is knowing what is it that you want to get away out of life, from life in general. And it's a big question, and it's something that can evolve, of course. But I do think that us knowing our purpose, or us knowing, like just having an idea of, am I only here to get a paycheck, or am I here to actually achieve something in this world? And I mean, so you could be working for a business or for yourself, but let's say that you work for a business, a big business. You've got to, I think, connect really, really, closely to what is that business really saying that they want to actually achieve, whether it is when it comes to sustainability, whether it comes to, I mean, it's always the 3P at the end of the day. It's people, right? Product and profit.
Yeah.
So you always have to think about, actually there's 4. It's people, product, profit, and the planet. So you've got to start thinking about, okay, what is it that the business that I work for wants to achieve, and then you need to go deeper and be like, and how can I support that mission? And ideally, it's a mission that will be in sync with your own mission. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there, right? So I know that sometimes people just work in businesses because they just want a job. But actually, I think that we need to ask ourselves the question of, what is it that I want to achieve in this life? What's my legacy? And I think the idea of legacy is quite daunting, but I think it's very important. And the legacy could be, some people have, like, I want to change the world. So my legacy that's why I choose to actually be joyful, etc. But it's a long, like, ideally I'm here for the long run.
Yeah.
But for some people, when we are younger, I think it's important just to have a vision at least of the next 1 to 3 years, even if it's the next 6 to 12 months. A lot of people don't even ask themselves those questions. So what can be done is really us being much more vulnerable, and actually showcasing to people that, to especially when you are a junior in the team, is actually be relentless, and actually really wanting to show by example almost, oh wow, I need to, have you heard about this? And there is this and there is that. Do you see what I mean? Like, it's really understanding the context and actually wanting to broaden people's mind. And I think for an individual, it's really by educating themselves, like starting with that. And actually nowadays we live in a world that is very global, that is, we are all in each other's business, to be honest, because of social media.
Yeah.
But this could have a beautiful also consequence, which is that therefore we care about more, and us caring about more means that you can actually just stand up for something. I always ask, actually, what do people stand for? Because for me, that's, I think, is very, very important. What do people stand for? And sharing that, I think it's about sharing the journey. We don't know it all, but it's about saying, hey, have you seen, as I said, I'm just reading this book, and oh my God, there is this chapter all around, how our unconscious biases are really arising much more than than our conscious biases in life. And every day, every second, what does this actually mean? Have we, like, oh, you manager or you director, have you ever thought about this? Like, what that means, that when we do whatever you do, communication, whatever, PR, finance, whatever, that means that when I do X, Y, Z, my biases are at play. So what does this actually mean when it comes to representation? I think that everybody should be really focused on achieving unity. We are not living in a united world, I don't think. And so, but what is unity? I think everybody needs to really realize and start realizing that unity is equity, it's inclusion, and it's representation. If we do that if we anchor, we understand that unity means that, then I think we're all in to create this better world that we're all dreaming about,
Yeah, and I really like the advice kind of you've given there, because it's actionable. I think that's a really important aspect of it for like anyone who's listening, and even for myself. Like, you can educate yourself. It's something you can actively do. There are some amazing books out there, and there are even videos and podcasts that you can use to educate yourself, and then you do notice it, you see it in everyday life, and then you know about it.
Exactly. We just need, I think for me, the number one thing, I mean, I said number one, but it could be number 15 by the time I finish talking. But being proactive, I think it's not understanding that, I think what is important for young people to understand is that the world that we live in today, 2020, nobody saw it coming. And therefore, that means that the rules, the rule book is completely irrelevant now. And I think it's a great opportunity, therefore, to push and to actually and be relentless in pushing. I think what I don't see sometimes is people having passion, and being able to communicate their passion. So I think one of the things that I say to young employees that I train when it comes to diversity, inclusion, or business strategy, just in general, is this idea of, I encourage a lot of people to actually go and learn how to communicate effectively. Because when you know how to do that, you therefore learn how to challenge effectively, then you win. Because a lot of people, I realize, are really thinking about challenge or challenging others as a negative thing, as an aggressive thing, when actually it doesn't have to be that. So I would say, as a key action, and you can see you've got like, not very expensive courses online where it's all around communicating effectively, challenging effectively. And I think that's very key, because the onus really is on the younger generation. And I know it's a big responsibility, but realistically, I really truly believe that young people can really change the world that we live in today.
Yeah, and like you said, it is a responsibility, but I think it's also a massive opportunity. Like with social media and the internet and things, it all unites us, and we see what we want to change, and the future is our opportunity to change it.
100%. And I would push that even further. I think that it's the opportunity to change the world is a privilege, and I think I talk a lot about privilege in my training, but I think that the idea that we are living, breathing, that we are seeing things unravel, um, is such a privilege. And sometimes, we become too complacent, I think. We, as human beings, we just become too complacent. And I think we forget that it is actually a privilege and a luxury to be able to even have this type of conversation. Some people don't even know what they're going to eat tonight. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that when we look at the wider perspective of things, I think it's very important to focus on more than just ourselves.
Definitely. And when you talk about it like that and you look at the big picture, you can see like exactly what those privileges are, and it just makes you want to use them for something. I think one thing with privilege is it exists, like it definitely exists, but I think it's about noticing what your privileges are and then using them for the good.
Exactly. So I always talk about this concept of, when it comes to privilege, people, so let's say there is a scale 0 to 10 or 0 to 20, people on the lower end need to borrow privilege, and because we're all aware and we also know who will be at the low end, let's not kid ourselves. And then people on the higher side, higher end of the scale, they need to lend their privilege, right? And actually, this is how, again, we're creating equity rather than just focusing on equality, which is not going to happen in our, in this generation. I don't think, but at least we can really focus on equity for equality. And I think when we look at it this way, it's very interesting to then understand that, to your point, privilege does exist. We just need to actually deal with it, and face it. I think too much I see people who are not facing into the discomfort, and discomfort for anything, right? It could be that, it can be race, it can be losing weight, it can be anything, whatever makes people uncomfortable, they don't want to actually target in order for them to feel comfortable, which I don't understand, because again, for me, it's my life has been always about being comfortable. I want to be comfortable, whether it's financial, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, whether it's mental. I want, or spiritually even, I want to feel comfortable. It's very key.
Yeah, and I guess now you can't ignore the stuff that makes you uncomfortable, because there's so much that makes people uncomfortable. Like, it's about changing it. And I think as well, if we ignore the things that make us uncomfortable, like, how will we ever grow?
Thank you. And this is the piece. I do think that some people just don't want to grow, to be honest. I think that they feel that they just reached maybe their prime, and that's it. When actually, to your point, for me, why is it that I'll choose to always be like joyful, and I mean, I'm not always joyful, because I do actually, I'm known in the industry, or in my industry, to be like, very blunt, actually, very direct, but I say things with a certain, I guess, a certain, spice, a certain way that actually gets people to still feel good. So I will tell people, you're shit, I need you to do better. But they will want to do better, because they'll feel like, oh my God, I should do better. Vanessa said it, like, why not? Because this is the thing, it's like, why not? And so that, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. But this idea of growth, this is why I became also an executive coach, because for me, it's about instilling in people the idea of a growth mindset. I think that this is, again, how we can really push boundaries, and our own boundaries. Like, when I look at and I reflect on my life, there's like, when I look at where I'm at today, there is a lot of things that I dreamt, that they would happen, but I didn't think that they would happen, to be honest. When you're ambitious, sometimes you do a vision board or
Yeah.
whatever, and then you just have stuff there, and you're just like, okay, fine. But it's almost as though a moment of, I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes you're so optimistic that you're just like, yes. But actually, when it pans out, sometimes you don't reach the goals that you want to reach, but then you reach other goals that actually were maybe first meant for you, and second potentially better because they make you feel comfortable. So therefore, they're more, that's what you wanted to reach in the first place. But of course, this is in hindsight that then you realize, oh, actually, I'm where I needed to be. Do you know what I mean? But it's just very interesting. I mean, the journey of life, isn't it? And especially the professional life, and how we can empower ourselves actually to define who is it and what is it that we will be. I think this is something that's often we forget because we don't believe that we can achieve, right? And this is what I used to say to myself a lot, when I was younger. I used to be like, Vanessa, if you believe, then you shall achieve, because I talk to myself a lot. I've got like my mantras and stuff that I tell sometimes myself. And I was always saying this, even to my clients. I was to say, okay, if we believe, then we shall achieve. And for me, it was like it was not questionable, you'll find a way because your mind is on it. Let's go. Right. So yeah, it's really interesting.
I think as well, like having that mindset, because when you set yourself a goal, like I do it like I've done it loads in the past. I've been like, okay, this is what I want to achieve, and it's really big and grand, so I don't really do anything to get to it. I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, it's never going to happen. But when you start breaking down those goals, and like you said, kind of when you're younger, looking kind of 3 years into the future, who do you want to be then, and taking those steps to get there, I think then you kind of achieve the big goals eventually, but you're working towards those smaller steps.
Exactly. And this is the key, I think, really thinking about stuff in small steps, because otherwise it becomes, again, too overwhelming. And again, a lot of people don't like this idea of feeling uncomfortable. So I think that, again, really saying, okay, how can I create bite size? Often we are very impatient also. And I think that it doesn't help. So I've learned, one of the key things that I had to learn as a key challenge actually that I overcame was to become more patient. And I say to become more patient. I am actually still a very impatient person. But when I am, because I'm like, but why not now? Like when I have a conversation, I'll be like, okay, fine, let's go to solutions, Like I love to talk about stuff, but also I'm like, okay, but how do we get there? But then I had to actually really understand and sync with other people's energy and other people's context to understand that actually, and there is this cheesy thing, right, in English that says, if you want to go far, go alone. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, kind of go, together. And I think this is the piece where I was just like, I've got to sync. I'm a very quick learner and I'm a very quick thinker, but I was just like always thinking, I've got to sync with everybody else because I want to go fast, but I want to go far. And I want to bring people with me on that journey. And that's the piece that really helps me to actually connect with my patients, even though I don't think that I'm necessarily a very patient person. My boyfriend will never say that I'm patient. He will always say that I'm very patient, actually. But why not? Like I think it's about adapting ourselves, and being flexible. I think that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, and also the fact that you're aware of it and you're self-aware that that's like a quality that you work on. I think, like you say, people want to be comfortable. Sometimes we ignore the things that we aren't that good at, or that is one of our negative traits, and ignoring them doesn't help us get further in life. And yeah, it's kind of like sitting with your own things that you really need to work on, and then working to change them.
Exactly. I mean, for me, I've got imposter syndrome, you see. So I think it's very easy for me to work on things that I need to work on, because I always feel, that I'm never good enough, and which is very interesting. But I, even when I say it myself, I'm just like, but why is it that you think this way? But I really always think that, oh, I'm never good enough, like I've got this thing in me where I'm like, oh, there's so much to achieve, there is so much to do, that I get bored very quickly, which means that sometimes I'm just like, oh, maybe I've not gone into depth enough, or I always have something like a little bit of a doubt that will creep in. But then I'll be like, okay, go back to your mantras and really kind of connect with that, and that helps me actually just power through and still achieve. Like sometimes, as I said, if somebody would have told me that during a pandemic, in 18 months within, having my own business, I would achieve what I'm achieving now, I would just be like, get out of here. There's no way. And actually, I am really, I'm very proud, which often we don't even sit down to actually be like, oh, wow, So yeah, I'm very proud of what I've achieved and how I've achieved it. I think this is very important. The authenticity and integrity piece again, how I achieved it. It's not only about the what, it's also about the how, and the why.
Yeah, and it's good that you said you're proud. That's another thing I think, particularly like those who do like face imposter syndrome, you can be self-critical and you can see all the things you need to do and the things you need to change, but it's really hard to recognize the stuff that you're great at. And I always find that a friend can tell you like a million things you're amazing at, but you can struggle to think of like 5. And
yeah, you're right. But I think this is a muscle that you've got to develop, isn't it? So that's, even though I have imposter syndrome, I have my 5 things, I have my 10 things. I actually, to be honest, I've got mostly one thing often that I tell myself is like, Vanessa, you love yourself. So that helps you to navigate anything, and because you got your own back, at least that's very important to me. Because I will never throw myself under the bus. Sometimes I do see people throwing their own self under the bus, and I'm just like, you're just a crazy person. I really have my own back, which I think is very important. But again, it's a muscle that you have to exercise and remember, that you do have, and you have to actually, exercise it and actually be like, okay, that's why I did my mantras, I think, because those help me a lot, in again, powering through. And sometimes I'll be scared to do something, but then I've got one mantra which is from Sister Act 2, and it's if you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere, you better wake up and pay attention. And for me, this you better wake up and pay attention. It's really this, come on, girl. Because I have my attention span is very low, so I love to do different things. I love to multitask. I love to do all of this, but sometimes I'm just like, come on, let me pull myself up and be like, if you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere, you better wake up and pay attention. So pay attention, And but that's quite nice, I think, to actually be able to talk to oneself like that, right?
Yeah, that mantra is amazing, and I love musicals. So even when you were talking about Legacy, and I was just thinking of Hamilton, but that's like, because when I think of mantras, I normally think of like quite kind of like not very personalized. They're like just like things you find off the internet, like go, be happy and stuff like that, which I guess like how do you get your own, like how did you find your mantras, and what can a mantra be?
To be honest, a mantra for me can be anything, because why not? And this is when we go back to, if you really connect to what is it that we've got to achieve in this life, in this society, then we need to disrupt. So I speak, I work with, many clients, and I talk about my mantras all the time. So nowadays I work from, I work with like the Walt Disney Company. I work with Gymshark. In the past, I worked with Levi's. I work with Bleach London. I work with, really amazing LVMH. I work with very amazing clients, and I'm always myself, and I think that's another piece that's very important. But why is it? That is because I've got my mantras, and they carry me through many things. So this idea, so I think one key thing is, if you're into musicals, if you're into movies, then really focus on, there's always some key truth. There's always some little mantras actually in movies or musicals. So I think connect with that. A favorite song, it could be a lyric. For me, a mantra doesn't have to be, to your point, like a cheesy, I don't know, have fun, or
Yeah.
if you think you can do it and things like this. It doesn't have to be that. It can just be anything that really resonates with you and that makes you. For me, it's what makes you really lean in and actually be like, yes, like when you hear it, then you're just like, yes, and that is that for me. I think that's the most important, and it can be really anything. It could be a sound. It could be, it doesn't have to be. I think it's for people to decide what is it that they want. That what is it that makes them, do something. I think that's the important piece.
That's brilliant. I really just want to go now and like write down all my favorite like musical lyrics and get some like really like badass mantras. But yeah.
And slides. I have a slide. So I have 2 key slides that I recommend to people, especially to young people, but I mean to all of my clients. So I've got a slide which is so it's my introduction almost. So it's a mood board about me. And it's basically me in a mood board. So my name, of course, what do I do? And then keywords that describe me. So for example, I will have honest and direct, bossy, because I'm very bossy, passionate. I have people lover, because I love people, even though sometimes people are the biggest pain in my bottom, but I still love people. I'm an empath and a softie, even though I'm badass, but I'm very, I love to cry. I cry with everybody, which is, I think is quite actually healthy. I'm a problem solver, so put stuff like words. Then I also get people to think about those little quotes actually that sometimes are quite cheesy, but actually can get you going again. So on that mood board, I've got one which is there's a million fish in the sea, but I'm a mermaid, because again, you stand out as being a Black woman with like a big personality like mine and who wouldn't shut up. Then definitely I'm a mermaid, because people don't necessarily expect me, to be the way. And then I also have, I put like companies that I work with. So it's kind of my business cards, but it's basically just a slide. And then I also have the mantras, right? Which is, so I told you already about, if you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere, you better wake up and pay attention. I've got this idea of be stubborn about your goals and be flexible about your method. And this is the piece. You can be very stubborn about ways that you want to be, but you've got to have some flexibility and also apply versatility in how you get there, right? Because often people don't get to their goals because they've been too stuck on something. Then I've got another one, which is from a movie called The Help. And I don't know if you've seen The Help, but if you haven't, I encourage you to watch it. But basically, there is a woman at some point. She's the help in the house, and she's talking to a little white girl, and she tells her, "You is strong, you is beautiful, etc." So I got inspired by that and turned it into, "I am strong, I am beautiful, I'm important, I matter, I love me." Because again, some days you feel like you don't matter. You feel that nobody cares. But actually, if you care about you, that's really good, right? So then I turned that into this.
Yeah. I love this, and this has been such an amazing episode. So I just want to give you the opportunity now at the end what would you say to someone who they've been knocked down? What would you say to someone like that?
Okay, I would say connect really with your soul and redefine. Use this energy to strip everything away and actually connect and go back to basics. Really connect with your soul and do not let your ego come into play. That's one. Two, I would say never forget that your energy really introduces who you are before you speak, before you position yourselves. So being in a dark place, that's cute, but this is not going to get you anywhere. So I have this method where I tell people, acknowledge the sadness, acknowledge the negative feelings, acknowledge them, but I call it a porn cry movie list, where I've got movies that make me cry. As soon as I start, I'm like, oh my God, because they put me into this mood, right? So have one, 2 or 3 titles, 10 titles, whatever. When you feel some type of funky like that, just watch a movie, or listen to music that makes you feel sad and cry. your eyes out. Let it out. Let it out. Crying is the same as smiling to me. Is one of the most beautiful things we can do, because for ourselves, for our well-being, for our physical health, and to achieving our goals. So I would say really think about this, because when you let all of the negativity out, then of course your energy shifts. And then it opens up new possibilities. I would say also, when you feel in those moments, this is the time also to connect with people. Do not stay by yourself. Do not get paralyzed by just being like, oh my God. Really connect with people. Do not put your negativity onto them, but say, I'm in a bad place right now. I need support. And we should not feel scared to actually ask that, And I think, that's what I would say. That's what I would say. Redefine.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you found it helpful. I really appreciate all the support I get for Hey It Gets Better. It would be amazing if you could subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want some more content, then you can always follow us on Instagram at Hey It Gets Better. And for more stories of inspiration and resources to help you get through life, visit our website, heyitgetsbetter.com. I hope you have a wonderful week, and remember, hey, it gets better.